The competition is heating up in your fantasy football league, and as you try to pull away or play catch-up with a grueling week of trades, waiver pickups, and lineup tweaks, don't forget, let your loved ones know that you're still breathing with bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. Take it from me, nothing tops the excitement of a 1-800-Flowers bouquet, and right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, 1-800-Flowers will give you another dozen absolutely free. That's 40% off the original price. This beautiful bouquet of 2 dozen roses in a rainbow of colors will leave your loved one stunned without spending a fortune. It's the best of both worlds. Amazing roses at an unbeatable price. These gorgeous roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. A dozen multicolored roses for $29.99 plus another dozen free. It's an incredible deal and a small price to pay with all your fantasy league winnings. There's 1-800-Flowers.com and there's everybody else. You know who I trust when the game's on the line. To order a dozen multicolored roses plus an extra bouquet for just $29.99, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike.
America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone, network, and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
All right, here we are. We are Mike and Mike. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, and we say welcome to the working week, and lots of work to be done today in and outside the NFL. We have all the games, of course, and we have Russell Westbrook's contract, and we have the baseball playoffs upon us. We have O.J. Simpson released, so we are packed for a 4-hour sports excursion. But this morning, Mike, as it seems we have to far too frequently, we begin by acknowledging tragic events. Lately, it feels like a lot of them have been of the natural variety, and this time something totally different. You may be aware, maybe you're not, if you're just waking up, of an incident involving an active shooter on the Strip in Las Vegas, in which at the last count we had heard some 20 people are dead, and you fear that that number may grow. Horrible scenes in Las Vegas overnight.
Yeah, there was a country music festival right in the area of Mandalay Bay, that area, and Jason Aldean was finishing up and that festival, and there was a shooter that turned out to, I believe it was on the 32nd floor of the hotel, and just nonstop firing, some people said, for at least over a minute. There were those that thought it was fireworks. There were those that thought at the end of the festival that it was fireworks going off, until obviously there's a horrific point when you realize it's not. As people around others were falling, and you could see gunshot wounds, and obviously mass confusion going on then. It turns out they got the gunman. They killed the gunman, and they believe that was the only person. They thought there might have been another person with them, but they don't believe there was. So they did get the person, but not before that person just wreaked incredible havoc on the group of people at the festival. Just what a horrible, horrible situation. I mean, you don't even know what to say. You know, there's one thing about, obviously, with Mother Nature and the whole deal, and the horrific things that happen there, and everybody banding together to try and help. But, you know, the concert in London with Ariana Grande and that explosion that killed people, and this, I mean, it's just sickening. And you know, all you can do, you know, when you're thousands of miles away or whatever, nowhere near the scene, is just, you know, pray that those that haven't passed, you know, that they make it. There's many that are in critical situations, critical condition right now, and pray for those, the families of those who lost people in that one. But just a horrible, horrible situation.
You're exactly right. You think about what to say at times like this, and there really isn't. There isn't anything sitting here that we can say that is going to make anybody feel better who's directly involved. It's a place that so many of us have been many times. And so, yes, we will leave it at that for the moment. If there's further information that we can pass along, we certainly will. But I think the best thing we can do is do our show here and go through all of the sports. Obviously, it was a very, very busy sports weekend, a ton of NFL action to get to that we will. So we put together an off the top for you here of all the events outside of the NFL so we can catch you up on all of those. And we start with the President's Cup, Mike, which was really no contest. They went into yesterday with the U.S. holding an almost insurmountable lead, and the international team actually won a lot of the events yesterday, but it didn't make any difference. The U.S., an easy winner.
Yeah, this one, and they've done this in the past. They won their 12th President Cup, 19-11, improved their record to 10-1-1. The 8-point margin was the largest the U.S. had since the 2000 event when they won by 11 points. There was a rookie that actually clinched it in the fourth single match yesterday. Daniel Berger did that. Phil Mickelson won his singles match 2-1. 2-1, I should say, is 26 match won all time, most in the event. Tiger Woods is second with 24. But quite honestly, this has really never been great competition, correct? I mean,
it has not. You just read the stat. I mean, the U.S. always wins this thing, and this time again, winning it handily. It's fun to watch. This weekend was so one-sided. It really wasn't as much fun to watch.
No, it wasn't. But I just like the different golf. I love, the partners, the match play, the whole different side of just watching stroke play in the tournament.
I'm entertained by how friendly they are. I mean, the camaraderie amongst those guys that you usually see competing with each other, and they're friendly rivals. But it is fun to see them playing together.
Get to the Ryder Cup, where there's a little more hate involved.
The celebrating is also kind of amusing. No, I meant amongst the teammates, even the American teammates. When Mickelson doing that ridiculous Three Amigos dance, and not particularly well. Anyway, Team USA, an easy winner. Giancarlo Stanton falls one shy of 60 and two shy of 61 home runs, despite a bunch of hits yesterday, and got a standing ovation from the crowd in his final game of the season.
It was even put up to first, and he usually hits in the two-hole. He hit a lead off so he could get that extra at-bat, but wasn't able to get the home run. Tied for the 9th most in the season in MLB history. He finished tied. The other guy he tied with was Babe Ruth, hit 59 in 1921. Aaron Judge also set a rookie record, hitting 52. It's interesting, though. Stanton did lead the majors in RBIs, was 132. Ozuna, his teammate, ranked third with 124. And Nolan Arenado, who's going to be, I believe, your NL MVP, was sandwiched in there at 130. But a couple of big boppers in there. Both two end up in the 50s with Stanton and with Judge. But he didn't get to that 61 that he wanted. We know the record is 73, but he really looked at that 61. First, we'd like to get the 60 just to get another who we believe is a clean athlete, getting to that mark.
Right. So Babe Ruth in 1927 and Roger Maris remain the only players ever without any cloud or whatever you want to call over it to hit 60 home runs in a season. The baseball playoffs start tomorrow. Yankees and Twins, with the action on ESPN TV and ESPN Radio. And then the National League wildcard game is Colorado-Arizona. You'll hear every pitch of the postseason on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, and we look forward to it. Mike, we'll certainly have plenty of preview. We'll do a little today. We'll go heavy on it tomorrow.
And for the season series, New York beat Minnesota 4-2, 3-0 at home. The game will be in New York, and the other game will be in Arizona. Arizona held an 11-8 advantage over Colorado, 5-5 at home. But Greinke is pitching for Arizona. He pitched to a 13-1 count at home this year.
Yeah, it was a very interesting baseball season. It did not have, for all of the races that sort of went right down to the wire, it didn't have the kind of gripping finish.
Didn't finish
that
way
in recent years.
Plus, you didn't have the Cubs
going
into the postseason last year as the World Series favorite. After we all know, obviously, what that franchise has been through. So that was obviously the big headline last year.
We do, for the record, have the Cubs, but I know what you mean. We didn't have a story
We didn't
like
have
the
that
Cubs.
story.
Yeah.
And now we have them. They won a World Series, so they're old news.
Right. I could just picture people saying, "Oh, Golic, what are you talking about? We have the Cubs."
You know what I'm
We have the Cubs.
Yeah.
But we don't have what the Cubs were last year, and we won't again for another 100 years. And then finally, as expected, O.J. Simpson was released from prison in Nevada very early Sunday morning. We have some video and audio of him as some reporters caught up with him in Nevada yesterday, and we'll wait and see. The stories are all about him wanting to go to Florida. We'll have one of his former attorneys late in the show today.
Yeah, and listen, they pulled it off how they wanted to. They didn't want a lot of fanfare. That's why they did it in the middle of the night. Very few cameras that were there or anything along with it. Looks like he's going to Florida. It seems that some in Florida don't want him there. And basically, when talking about where he's going, basically it says, none of your business, but everybody believes that's where he is going to end up.
And that is just a smattering of some of the sports stories away from the football fields yesterday with Off the Top presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot, see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. And that doesn't even encapsulate the whole sports weekend, because clearly the biggest story, I thought, outside of the NFL of the sports weekend is the Russell Westbrook contract.
Right.
I don't know about you, and I don't know if there was an inkling of this Friday morning. I wasn't here.
No.
Didn't see that one coming.
Nope.
And a couple of different thoughts. I mean, enormous credit to Sam Presti, the GM of the Thunder. They're hanging on. Whatever it is,
they really are.
They're doing everything they can possibly do. He turned 4 nondescript players into Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, and maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe it didn't. But one way or another, Russell Westbrook just decided, this is where I'm going to stay. $200 million later, obviously, had a lot of reasons to do it, and he has the richest contract in NBA history, and he is locked in OKC.
He is. The deadline for this was October 16th, so, that's still a little bit of ways away, so nobody saw this Friday. I guess he was just waiting for Kevin Durant's birthday.
That's right. I mean, do you think, is there any way in the world that was a coincidence?
Just wonder, who knows anymore? You put on the tinfoil cap and you look at the conspiracy theory. Who knows? But, as we've been told by our basketball people, it'd be very unlikely to have the team they have, the stars they have this year, again next year, above what it would do to their salary and the luxury tax and all that. But looks like you're going to have Westbrook. I wouldn't be shocked if the other two, and Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, won't be around for that one. But Russell Westbrook, I tell you, he's there for the duration. He's and the way Presti is working his magic, we'll see. Now, will they ever? At this point, does it look like they're going to compete with the top? It's tough to think. I don't think anybody believes. You believe they worked up themselves to the second in the conference.
They have a chance to.
We'll see.
They have a chance to be second.
Listen, better than they were last year. I get that. Next year, the team is going to change again. But Russell Westbrook is basically saying, hey, gang, I'm going to be the constant here. So, build around me.
Yeah. I think it's a great story. I think that all sports leagues are better, whatever the expression is about a fence only being as strong as its weakest link. When little markets like Oklahoma City can keep big stars like Russell Westbrook, I think it is in the best interest of the entire sport. Okay, so there's all of that from the weekend, and then obviously to the NFL. And as I was thinking about what football game we should lead with, Mike, I settled on Panthers-Patriots because there's a lot going on here. The New England Patriots came into this season, I was calling them the Golden State Patriots, because they felt like they were such a prohibitive favorite in a way that we hadn't seen a football team be in a long time. And I'll tell you what, they are one brilliant Tom Brady comeback away from being 1-3, and their defense has been sliced and diced every single week. They have been torn apart by 4 different quarterbacks. If you go back to the beginning of the season, Brady has had to carry this team, and the question is, which one goes first? Does the Patriot offense lose the ability to carry the defense, or does the defense start to put it together?
No, I would lean the way of because if you're talking about the offense not being able to carry, you're talking about Tom Brady. As long as Gronkowski stays healthy, he's that weapon. Chris Hogan was a good weapon for them yesterday. So I don't worry about, listen, you score 30 points, you should win a game, right? I mean,
not when your defense is as bad as their defense is.
But you know what I'm saying? If your offense, if you go out and say, you know what, we're going to score 30 points today, there's usually a pretty good chance you think you have a good shot to win the game. And they did yesterday, where we're beat, right at the final gun by the field goal by Carolina. So here's a couple of stats. Last year, only 3 quarterbacks threw for over 300 yards against New England all season long. Last year.
Right.
3 all season. They've played 4 games this year. Every quarterback has thrown for over 300 yards. Mm-hmm. Alex Smith, 368. Drew Brees, 356. Deshaun Watson, 301. Cam Newton, 316. So that defense is awful. So my thought would be that the defense is going to get better before the offense, outside of injury. Injury is the great equalizer. So outside of injury, I would look to them to be able to improve. By how much, I don't know. Again, you're not bringing in all pros off the street. It's who you have. So it's how you play them and how they play. They've always been so good at being the chameleon to shape shift to whatever they needed to do on defense to get it done with versatile players. They're not getting it done. This stat amazes me the most, and this brings in another team that's been a surprise, would be the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are scoring like crazy, right?
Yeah.
The Rams have gone from worst scoring offense in 2016 to the best scoring offense in 2017. The Patriots have gone from the best scoring defense last year to the worst scoring defense this year. So this is what happens in football in a year, the change you can have and the shift you can have. Now, as we'll get to the Rams in a bit, the Rams were 3-1 at this point last year. But it certainly feels different than this year than it does last year. But back to this story in the New England Patriots, their defenses, they're bad. They're just bad right now. They can't get a good rush on the quarterback. They're letting and in turn, it's all a domino effect on what quarterbacks are able to do to them downfield. So that is going to have to be schematic. It's going to have to be the plays just going to have to improve because all of a sudden you're not going to insert all pros somewhere from somewhere else. It's just not going to happen. This is who you have. You're a quarter of the way through the season. We're at a point now where you can kind of say, this is who we are. So, but if there is a team and a coaching staff that you think can improve, which everybody tries to do, you naturally lean toward New England and say, okay, they're good enough to be able to improve, but that defense has a lot of improving to go.
Correct. I agree with you. I think I said this on Twitter yesterday. Smart Money says Bill figures this out, and their defense by Halloween looks totally different than it does now. But through 4 games, only the Indianapolis Colts have allowed more points this season than the Patriots have. And again, they needed Brady to bring them back from the brink of defeat against a rookie quarterback in Deshaun Watson, as spectacular as he was again yesterday. Right. Otherwise, they'd be sitting at 1-3 right now through the start of this season. They gave up 444 yards at home yesterday to Carolina. They gave up 140 on the ground, and Cam threw for 304 through the air. Louis Riddick was watching a lot of it and saw a lot of miscommunication or lack of communication in the Patriots secondary.
The number one thing that will beat you in the NFL as far as secondary play is concerned is lack of communication. And you've heard Devin McCourty talk about it. You've heard Patrick Chung talk about it. You've heard Malcolm Butler talk about it. That communication right now keeps breaking down for them in critical moments. Mm-hmm. And teams are doing certain things to them, especially when you're talking about rub routes, pick routes, that really require the secondary, meaning the corners and the safeties, the corner and the nickelback, the corner and the dime linebacker, the safety and the dime linebacker. It really requires a lot of communication. And right now, these guys are having communication breakdowns. You can see it right here. There's confusion on this route. When players are that wide open, it's not because you're not good. It's because you're not talking. And when you get down in the red zone, it really becomes a problem because you have no margin for error.
Cam Newton throwing against this defense has given up the points. Cam only had, we're talking about accuracy issues with Cam Newton, 22 of 29, only 7 incompletions for 316 yards, and he ran the ball 8 times for 44 yards. From the Carolina side of it, as I'm sure, hey, we're the winning team, talk about us, and I get it, but we do have a defending Super Bowl champ. That's defense is just awful right now, but Cam has to run for Carolina. I know they don't want him to run as much, but he is going to have to run because that's how that offense runs best. So they have a good game yesterday. He helps get them in a position. You had to wonder. You wondered that when New England scored, and amazingly enough, you kind of, as we're all sitting there and texting in our group and all saying, oh, yeah, Carolina, you know what's coming. They showed a shot of Ron Rivera, and you just said, well, Ron knows it's coming. And there's Tom Brady lead him down for the tying touchdown. You knew it was going to happen. A little scary at times, but it's Tom Brady. You knew he was going to get it done. But what I actually found myself doing was going, this defense isn't good, and there's time on the clock.
Yeah, of course.
They can't. They're where they're at to score now. They can't burn the last 4 minutes of the game. They can't burn all that up, and they're going to give Carolina time. And the way that defense has been, Carolina's got and they got a kicker that can boot the ball and put themselves in position to get that win.
Look, the Panthers are a good team. No one's saying no, but right. You gave the stat off the right off the top. The Patriots have allowed 300 yards passing to every quarterback they have faced this year, and there's no rest for the weary now. They play Thursday night against Jameis and Tampa, so we'll see what winds up happening there. The Patriots, again, looking up now at Buffalo in the AFC East after a terrific start by the Bills and a great win for the Bills yesterday in Atlanta. And for the first time this year, the Patriots are not the favorite to win the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Again, any mention of Las Vegas this morning will conjure up terrible images, but you know what I mean. The betting favorite right now is not the New England Patriots for the first time. Do you know who it is?
Well, I saw the stat, but I was going to say Kansas City, but it's not Kansas City.
It's Pittsburgh. Yeah. Right now, the wagering favorite is Pittsburgh at 9-2, followed by New England at 5-1 and Green Bay at 6-1.
the Chiefs aren't even third. They're
Right.
not even in the top three. Now, they play tonight. They're the last undefeated team in the NFL as they take on Washington tonight. But I would imagine if they beat Washington, those odds should change a little bit. I mean,
Maybe.
boy.
Depending on if you buy into them or you don't. And the odds also are based on a lot of things, on the popularity of teams and the numbers of teams.
Sure.
People that might go in there and bet them. If you watch, for example, Green Bay, and I'm not knocking anything about them, and it's all about Aaron Rodgers, but to me, the best team in that division is Detroit.
Yeah.
And they proved it again yesterday by going into
yeah.
Minnesota and winning. Look, the Lions are 6 inches away from being unbeaten.
They absolutely are.
The Golden Tates took us.
Yeah.
Winds up 1 yard further into the end zone last week against Atlanta. They're sitting there right now at 4-0.
They're definitely the most balanced team. Green Bay dealing with a lot of injuries, and I'll get it out of the way quickly. I won my nerd game. That was my nerd game, the Detroit Lions, so I'm 2-2 now.
Against Minnesota.
Against Minnesota. Minnesota, the Nerd Power Index had Minnesota. I went with Detroit. I like Detroit. I like how balanced they are. They definitely are the most balanced team in that division, but Green Bay has the best quarterback in that division, so we'll see.
And Minnesota may have the best defense. Minnesota may have suffered the biggest injury.
Oh, my gosh.
The Dalvin Cook thing. What a shame to see that. That kid is so good.
So good. I mean, you were high on him right away, but listen, I was as well with you, but there was concerns about character, concerns about shoulder injuries dating back to high school. But, man, he got out of the block strong. Kareem Hunt, obviously, the big-time rookie, the third-rounder, is giving us all the big-time numbers out of the rookies. But Dalvin Cook had been playing extremely well. He makes a cut. Non-contact goes down. I mean, at that point. I mean, it's just it's not even – it's almost – and it's a shame to do, but you can't even guess. You can't even say, I hope it's not that bad. When that happens, when it's non-contact, they go down, grab their knee right away. It's usually ACL, and I'd imagine that's what we're going to find out today.
Yeah, that's what all the reports are coming out of there. They'll do an MRI today that will confirm it, but that is – the expectation. And then quickly in the zone, as we try and fly through all this, and we'll have all morning long to get to the rest of it. In the zone, brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone with AutoZone. You know who I'm going to put in the zone, Mike, because I was looking it over. Did you see the stat that Field Yates tweeted about the Denver defense?
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
This is a tremendous statistic. All right, the Denver defense this season, we talked about the Patriots giving up 300 yards passing to every quarterback they faced. Well, how about the opposite of that? The Broncos have faced 4-star running backs. They have faced Melvin Gordon, they have faced Zeke Elliott, they have faced Shady McCoy, and they have faced Beast Mode. And those 4 running backs combined against the Broncos this year have taken 50 carries for 95 yards and 0 touchdowns. So those 4 guys haven't rushed for a combined total in 4 games of 100 yards, and they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown to any of them. That's their run defense. Denver's defense is so good. They're allowing 51 yards rushing per game. That's the fewest in the NFL. The Broncos have a formula with consistent, not spectacular, but consistent offensive play to win that division. Let's see what Kansas City does.
Without a doubt. And, by the way, the ability to get to the passer. Time and time again with a guy named Von Miller and all his front 7 mates. So, yeah, they that division, all of a sudden we were basically putting Oakland at the top of it or Kansas City, and Kansas City is there. But, man, the Denver Broncos, I still think there's going to be 3 teams coming out of that depending on the results of the injury of Derek Carr. So that's something we have to keep an eye on. And there were a lot of injuries again this weekend. That whenever the quarterback goes down, in that case, Derek Carr going down with the back injury and leaving the game. So obviously have to keep a big eye on that.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, Twitter reaction all morning. Let's start hearing from you on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Scott Robar tweets, Green Bay is much better than the Lions. The Pack has so many injuries. They're a different team by the end of the season.
Well, Scott, that's the way it goes. I mean, so get to me at the end of the season. Let's see if they're healthy. I mean, we don't know that right now. We're talking about right now. Right now, the Detroit Lions are more balanced than Green Bay. And a lot of it is because of injury. I get it. But let's see. It's the great equalizer, and it could be the great thing that keeps you down as well. We have no idea what they're going to be like health-wise. It's very difficult to say, well, they're hurt now, they're going to be fine by the end of the year. If they are, we'll have that discussion. Right now, you can't.
And I'm not 100% sure even when they're fine that they're necessarily better than the Lions. The Lions are a pretty complete team. Don't look now. They're starting to run the ball a little bit.
They are, but when Green Bay's healthy, I like their defense. I do like their defense, and you have Aaron Rodgers with the passing game. Their running game isn't great. If you put them all healthy, I would go Green Bay. I agree with Scott in that regard, but they're not all healthy. So the greatest if in the world is if you're available.
Right, yeah, the best ability is availability. The thing I'll say about it's such an eye blink or eyelash kind of a league.
Yeah.
You say that the Lions are 6 inches away from being unbeaten, and they are. Look at the Falcons. They're 3-1. They're 6 inches away from losing the Detroit game. And if a Bears receiver could hold on to a ball, the Falcons could be 1-3 as easily as they are 3-1. So it's all so kind of crazy as we begin the month of October. Money Mike tweets, this is the first Super Bowl hangover New England has ever displayed. I'm not sure that's true. We sometimes talk about the Patriots as though they start every season on fire, because in recent years they have. But the truth is they've overcome what looked like slow starts. One of the years they won the Super Bowl, they lost their opener 31-0. So Smart Money says Bill has this thing figured out by Halloween.
And we've talked so much about them because they're the Super Bowl champs and the moves they made.
Right.
You know, paying Gilmore the big money in the secondary, bringing it, trading for Cooks from New Orleans. We're like, wow, you know, this is a team that won the Super Bowl and they're not standing pat. And that was just two of the moves. There was more than a few other moves, so it is a bit of a head scratcher.
Gene tweets, Tom Brady is just seeing what Aaron Rodgers has been dealing with for years. Tough to win when you have to score 30 a game. Look, there was a time when the Patriots were winning championships with one of the worst defenses in the NFL, or at least statistically. Now, I don't think they were ever really a terrible defense. Right now, they look flat terrible. So the question is, are they going – if they stay terrible, they're not going to win. And the Patriots, you don't win a championship with a terrible defense. You can win with a defense that statistically ranks very low.
Right.
There's a lot of things go into that.
The Giants did that some years ago. They ranked very low statistically. Remember, the Patriots were winning because of their defense early Super Bowls.
Right.
You know, as opposed.
But in recent years, mostly it's been last year they were the number one scoring defense in the sport.
Yes,
as
they
you
were.
Mentioned.
Yep.
Right now, their defense is just flat bad.
Yeah.
So the question is, can it stop being flat bad? And my prediction is it will.
Well, I think it will. I would give it more of a chance to go up. From a scoring side, it can't go down. You're already the lowest, and you have four quarterbacks in a row throwing for over 300 yards. So, yes, my bet would be that does improve some. But let's not expect some miraculous turnaround where all of a sudden they're the best defense around scoring-wise. That's you still have the same players. They're going to have the miscommunication that's going on. You're just flat out getting beat in some instances. I do think it'll get better, but let's be careful to think that it's going to turn around, from worst to first.
All right, much more Twitter all morning long. 1-800-Flowers.com. Twitter feed. We know there's been a London game now each of the last 2 weeks, and so the home team in those games does not have a home field advantage in the traditional sense. There's another team that does not have a home field advantage in any sense. In fact, Eagles tackle Jason Peters yesterday, speaking of the Los Angeles Chargers, said, quote, "It's almost like they have 16 away games. It's going to be tough sledding for those guys." I've been watching football all my life, so let's call it 40-something years that I can remember. I've never seen a home team get booed running out onto the field before. The Chargers got booed running out onto the field. Their stadium yesterday, which has the soccer lines on it, if you watch it, it has the areas, all of it. They're playing in a soccer stadium. They have to tarp off sections of the stands because they're not going to fill 30,000 seats.
30,000 seats, and they're tarping it off.
But more to the point, the place is an Eagles home game yesterday. Right. I mean, Philip Rivers was saying, well, we didn't have to go to the silent count, but it certainly wasn't ideal. And make sure everyone understands what he means when he says that.
Yeah, the silent count is normally what teams do when they're on the road because the visiting fans are so loud that you can't use your signals audibly. You have to go to the silent count. He's at home. He's supposedly in his home stadium now talking about, well, we didn't have to go to the silent count. I mean, just the utter thought of that is amazing.
So the Chargers, it's a disaster.
You got
it's
the mayor of L.A. saying they didn't need him there. I mean, it's horrible for them, and they do what they do best. In the Philip Rivers era, they lose by a couple of points. They haven't won a game, and the margin of loss is just over 5 points a game. I mean, it is the story of Philip Rivers is losing by a couple of points with a chance to possibly win it at the end of the game, but falling short. It's unreal.
Yeah, I don't know at some point what that says because it happens year after year,
yes, it
time
does.
After time, coaching regime after coaching regime. They're winless. The Giants are winless. Those teams play each other this weekend, so one of them has to win. Well, I guess they both can't lose. One of them doesn't necessarily have to win because the Jets and Jaguars almost tied yesterday. Next up, let's play a game, Mike, a new game that we'll create, and we'll call it Are They For Real? Mm-hmm. Got a couple of teams that have gotten off to surprisingly good starts at the quarter pole of the season. You tell me, are they for real? We start with the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are 3-1. Goff is playing.
Yes, he is.
Like the number one pick in the draft. Gurley is playing like what he looked like as a rookie. They got some good receivers, particularly this Cooper Kupp is spectacular to watch.
Absolutely is,
Their defense is rough and tough, and they have a great defensive coach, of course, in Wade Phillips, who could be the grandfather of their head coach. Are the Los Angeles Rams at 3-1 for real?
I think they're leaning that way. I'm not going to sit there and stamp it just yet. Let's remember they were 3-1 last year before finishing horrifically bad. It's a different team this year. Goff is playing well. I like the offense. And for the start, we keep talking about Aaron Donald and that defense. Their defense gives up a lot of yards and a lot of points. They do. They get run on. They get thrown on at times. They can get pressure on the quarterback, and they do make enough plays to win. But, in a game where you win 35-30, you gave up 30 points. So that worries me a little, that a lot of pressure is going to stay on your offense to have to score a lot of points. Now, Goff is showing that, and I do like the weapons and help they brought in. And you're right, Gurley, behind a bit of a revamped offensive line, has helped a lot. But they're still not good enough on one side of the ball to completely carry the other. So I like what Wade Phillips has done. I do like some of the pieces on their defense, but their defense has given up points and their defense has given up yards. So that's a little bit of a worry for me. They're certainly on the arrow up, but I don't want to stamp them, oh, yeah, this team is for real and they're now going to compete and be there at the end of the year, pushing for, well, really, if they're pushing for a playoff spot, that would be something incredible, and you have to give them that right now. But I'm going to be careful there because the defense has given up a decent amount.
They also have a really good kicker, Greg Zuerlein.
Oh, my gosh.
271 yards worth of field goals yesterday in a huge win at Dallas. The other team in my game of Are They For Real is Buffalo. The Bills are 3-1. They go into Atlanta yesterday. Now, I know Julio gets hurt and Sanu gets hurt at one point in that game. But the Bills shut them down defensively. Taylor makes plays. They have a couple of weapons. Shady obviously runs it. And they have a few other backs that run the ball as well. The Bills are 3-1. They've been pretty consistent all year. They easily could have beaten Carolina in the one game they lost. They dropped the ball down by the end zone that might have given them a chance to win that game. Are the Buffalo Bills at 3-1 for real?
Yeah, I put a little more on them. I like what LaShawn McCoy is doing. Tyrod Taylor, from the beginning of the season when we thought he wasn't going to start, when he was working on the concussion, I like, again, how he moves in the pocket. He could keep plays alive and make them for him to make them downfield. I do like what the defense is doing. Their running game is good. I mean, I am buying into them. And, boy, did you hear LaShawn McCoy go nuts in the locker room yesterday? Talk to the winners. Listen, he's right. He can talk all he wants. I picked the guy. I mean, two weekends in a row I got tweeted at by the Chicago Bears and the Buffalo Bills for picking against them. And I'm like, okay, listen, you're right. I picked against you. Talk. Go ahead and talk, LaShawn. You guys have earned it. You guys are playing well. I'm buying into what they're selling right now, yes.
Yeah, the Bills social tweeted at ESPN because every one of our analysts, inclusive of you, picked the Falcons to win. But candidly, who wouldn't? I mean, they're a home team. They're defending conference champions. They were unbeaten on the season, and they were playing at home.
To pick against them.
That's a great win by the Bills yesterday. And if you saw it, Atlanta came downfield time and time again with chances to win that game, and they couldn't do it. They got bottled up, whatever the word is. They got bottled up. They wound up having to kick a field goal the first time, and they turned it over on downs the second time. And the Bills were all over Matt Ryan.
Yeah, they were. They were.
I think both those teams are for real. I think the Rams are for real. Not to say they're a Super Bowl team, but they're good.
Listen, for the fact, when you say for real, I guess it's your definition. I mean, they're way better than they were last year. Their quarterback is showing a lot of things. So from that aspect, but as far as being caught up in 3-1 and saying, oh, my God, they're going to win their division, they're going to make a mark this year in the playoffs, I'm going to hold off a little bit because the defense does give up a lot.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Good morning, Jeff Saturday.
Morning.
we're going to try and run through as many things as we can with you here quickly. And let's just start with that New England defense, which has been the subject of so much of the conversation. When you see missed assignments, receivers running free, communication errors in the secondary in particular, and not a lot of pass rush from that group up front. That's not what you're accustomed to dealing with all the years you played with the Colts against them. Is that stuff that can get fixed? Is that stuff that Belichick and Patricia and his staff can look at and get fixed?
No, they can definitely get it fixed. Your issue is it started in week 1 with the Chiefs of not setting the edge. You saw so many guys being able to run outside. You see Hightower, they move him to the edge. I'm assuming to try to help that principle. And the crazy part is when you play a Bill Belichick defense, it was always built on edge setters. I mean, every time you played them, whether it was the Vrabels of the world, McGinnis, I mean, you go through name after name of these guys were never going to let you get outside. They would turn it back inside where all the tacklers can come and make the plays. So what you're seeing is once teams get outside of that tight end box, it's tough to tackle. We all know that, in open space. And then they're making mental errors on the backside, receivers running free. And then the calls, there were a couple iffies, the hands to the face deal on the receiver outside. I get it. Like, is it true to the rule? It is true to the rule. It's tough. One of them I thought was really, really a stretch. The other one was pretty legitimate. But again, away from it, it's those things are going to mount against you though. And so when you can't stop anybody, all those things come into play.
So let's put it. And Ninkovich is another one, a guy that was on the edge, who just retired, could set the edge very well. But so let's talk, because I tried to talk at it from what you can change schematically. All of a sudden, you're not getting Pro Bowlers sitting on the street that say, hey, come in and play. So this is what you have. So the communication has to be better. Execution has to be better. It's one thing to just miss a tackle or have a guy covered and just have him outperform you. It's another thing to not be in the right place. I mean, that's death on the field. So go to the offensive side. We've done a lot of offensive line talk of if you have a bad O-line, what can you do? What can you change? You can't really – you can shift your personnel around, like they're doing with the Giants and others, but you can't really change a whole lot. But schematically, you have to start thinking of maybe doing different things to protect players, do you not? And that's something they can do defensively, schematically, to try and help out?
Yeah, you and I both are. So however you're going to have to do it, whether you have to rush 3, drop 8, you're going to give the quarterback more time, but at least you'll fill the zones in the backside of, hey, we can break on the ball, keep our eyes on the quarterback. But Belichick will find a way. I mean, the one thing about him, I would say you can't hit the panic button on him, because if there's a coach, Matt Patricia, give him a ton of credit as well. They will find ways to get their guys back in position. The funny part is it may not be with the crew that's on the field now. They may find young guys. Hey, listen, if you're not doing your job, they're going to find somebody to play who all they want you to do is this. Just do that one job, and you'll be fine. I think that's what they'll go back to. They'll simplify it as opposed to adding to it.
Jeff Saturday here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Give me some straight talk on this Denver defense. Oof. I gave you the stat earlier this morning. These 4 running backs thus far this season have faced the Broncos: Melvin Gordon, Zeke Elliott, LaShawn McCoy, Marshawn Lynch. They have not rushed combined for 100 yards. Those 4 guys combined have run for 95 yards on 50 carries and no touchdowns. So we think of Denver as rushing the passer and Von Miller and all of that. They've become the best run defense in the NFL, the best defense in the NFL. What are we seeing in Denver right now?
The no-fly zone should get a lot of credit for that run defense as well, because what they're doing is they are challenging you on the outside. Chris Harris Jr., Talib, Roby, Stewart, even at the safety, all of those guys. Trust them that they're going to do their job on the back end. So you can put 7 in the box. If you know they're going to try to load you up with tight ends, you can get 8 down in there. But they are physically managed. Wolf is playing very good football, but these guys are understanding they can pin their ears back and get after it. Now, the Raiders gave them a ton of help, only running it 15 times. At some point, and again, same thing for the Cowboys, right? When they got stuffed, they try to get out of what they do well. The Raiders actually had a chance yesterday, which I was surprised. in the backfield. You saw Cook, their tight end. He had one tough catch in the end zone, but could have made it, right? Hit his hands.
Yeah,
he's leaning back over his shoulder.
Way,
But and then you had Cooper have another drop. And then you have another one to Cook. It should be a touchdown. I mean, he's wide open in the end zone.
Right through his hands.
Right through his hands.
Yep.
So, and that's E.J. Manuel, who's basically 8 for 8 before that. So as good as this Denver defense is, and they are very good, there was an opportunity for the Raiders to make this happen. So from the Broncos side, as good as that defense is, something's got to happen with that offense to put some points on to really put teams away.
I agree. Crabtree was out this game. Cooper had his 7th drop of the year, leads the league in that, and there were other drops as well. 2 3-1 teams, one from each conference. I'm telling you, only one can make the playoffs. Buffalo Bills, Los Angeles Rams.
Oh man, I'll go Rams.
Will you?
I will. I'll go. And here's why. Defensively, we knew they're good. They're a good football team. I love Wade. I mean, listen, he's going to get you right. They got these guys going, and Gurley I have been so impressed with Gurley. And McVay yesterday is talking. He doesn't even talk about Gurley. He gives Goff credit, offensive line credit, which I love. You know, you should. But this football team believes in what they can do. And with Austin kind of coming across in that motion, being able to hand it to him some, feed it to Gurley, and he's getting downhill and he's making athletic plays, and then he has almost 100 yards rushing. He's beating you all over the field. You got to feel really good if you're the Rams. And I think, listen, as ugly as it looks for New England, until you knock them off, I'm saying from the Bills' perspective, that's a tough mountain to climb.
Here's where I disagree a bit on the Rams, because you look at that defense and you think, boy, they're playing really well, and at times they are. There's only 4 teams in the NFL who have given up more points than them.
Right.
They've given up 105 points. That's what worries me, is forcing that offense while the young quarterback is doing well, forcing him to say, you got to score a lot of points every single game.
Yeah.
You know, there's one thing when the New England defense is playing bad and you're telling Tom Brady, go score me 30 points.
Light it up.
He can do that.
Yeah.
You know, Goff, who is playing well now, that's my only concern, is as the season goes on and that defense gives up points, will Goff and the offense be able to match that? That would be my only concern. Then my other concern for Buffalo is, just as you said, New England is still there and ain't going away.
Yeah, they ain't going away. Listen, Tyrod Taylor, by the way, yesterday played lights out. I mean, he extended, and he is phenomenal in play action, but plays he extended and then hitting it to Clay. Yeah. I mean, he dropped him in the bucket. Clay had a great performance himself, but give Tyrod Taylor a ton of credit. This guy is playing efficient football at the biggest moments against a really good team in the Falcons. And, I mean, listen, they're a good squad. I'm not sure, to your point, I'm not sure their offense can continue to produce. Mm-hmm. At some point, everybody's going to stack the box against Shady and make the receivers beat you, not just Clay. That'll be interesting for me as it moves on.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You're talking about the Rams. There's another team in L.A., obviously, and they're playing road games at home. The Chargers were booed running out of the tunnel yesterday by a building filled with Eagles fans.
Yeah.
And I heard Phillip Rivers talking about it, and to sum up his quotes, it basically was, it is what it is, and that, I guess, is the circumstance. But as a former player, in what way does that actually affect them? They lose games the same way every single week. They lose by 2 points at the end, whether it's a missed kick or a play here or there. And that's not just this year, but it feels like it's been going on a long time. But when you don't have any home field advantage with your crowd at all, does that have an impact on the team's ability to win?
Absolutely has an impact. Listen, you're a nomad. And the issue is, it's not only are you a nomad, at home, in San Diego, what used to be your home, the kind of the stuff that was going on before that is distracting, right? I mean, think about Phillip Rivers, all the kids still staying. I mean, all of those things affect players. You don't play football in a vacuum. And so as you're getting back to it, very difficult for those guys to balance it. Now your new home in LA, everybody's booing you. You got more Eagles fans than your own fans because nobody wants to support you. Again, Phillip Rivers, I mean, sainthood's got to be approaching because all the trials that poor dude goes through, again, plays pretty decent. It's an awful thing to watch because at some point they're going to find a way to lose it, and that's just disappointing. But for those guys, not having the momentum of a home crowd. I mean, there is something, too, when you're on defense and it's so deafening that offensive line can't hear, gives your defensive line a good jump. And think about what their two rushers, with Bosa and Ingram, how much of an advantage it is when the crowd is deafening and the offensive line can't hear and communicate. It makes a huge impact on those type of plays, and they're never getting the advantage of that.
They're never going to, because you have to win as well. The Rams are getting fans there as they're winning and kind of looking good. But for the Chargers, wow, what does the future hold there?
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, as we sit here with you on a jam-packed sports Monday morning, as they always are. And today particularly so. Obviously, we have the baseball season coming to an end yesterday, so we have the playoffs starting tomorrow, and we'll certainly talk a lot about that, particularly tomorrow. And we have O.J. Simpson being released from prison over the weekend. We have the full slate of college football action on Saturday and NFL action on Sunday. And Booger McFarland joins us here in our studio, as he does every Monday. And we're doing the best we can for you here today to talk about sports, because we hope that some of you will be with us today because you need a little bit of a respite from what feels like it is an almost daily barrage of this horrible and frightening and terrible news. And today is no different from so many others. If you're just waking up and have not heard what is being reported by CNN as being the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history, took place overnight in Las Vegas at a country music festival. Mike Jason Aldean, who's an artist I know that you know and are a fan of, was performing, and a gunman opened fire from the 32nd floor window, and they subsequently got him, and they got the gunman, and the gunman is dead. But it doesn't change the fact that at last count, 50 people were killed and over 200 injured. And as we've now said multiple times, I don't know what to say. Yeah. It's your job to be a broadcaster and to try and come up with some comment at a time like this. And I, for one, Mike, am just at a loss for words.
It blows my mind how in that 2 minute of time, how many lives have been changed, forever. Lives lost that the families deal with, and injured people that you don't know. There's so many that are in critical condition right now. It always is amazing, though, Booger, as we've talked about, first responders always running the wrong way, going into danger. But it's amazing to me that the everyday person, how they help as well. We've seeing and hearing so many stories of people pulling, people that don't even know that are just there to safety out of the way, or getting them to an ambulance. But you hate that they have to do that. The resolve of the human spirit is incredible in times of crisis, and you see that, and you're like, wow, that's amazing that they're doing that. But then you're like, my God, they have to be doing that because some nut job is up there 32 floors up just firing away at people for God knows what reason in their own ridiculous mind, and you have so many lives that end or get changed because of it.
Golic, the only thing I know to do at times like this is just pray. You pray for the people that have lost their lives, their families, and you hope that the sick people that do things like this, we can figure out a way to find them out before they do things of this nature, because it's sick, it's devastating, and it's just not right.
So the best we can do for you this morning, again, here, aside from offering our thoughts, is just do a football show and the rest of the sports news as well. And if you're choosing to spend this morning with us, we thank you for it. And again, I think the best we can do is try and take your mind off of this seemingly endless bad news, and we'll get to a bunch of the college with Booger as the hour progresses here, because that's what he's doing these days with ABC and the Saturday, and I love watching you guys in there and all that stuff. But let's start with a couple of the NFL questions before we get any further into this, and let's start with a team we haven't talked a lot about here this morning so far, and that is Philadelphia. The Eagles have gotten off to a very nice start this morning. They banked a big home win in the division to start the season in Washington, and boy, how big is that starting to look? Now, we'll see what the Skins do tonight against the last unbeaten in Kansas City. But they find ways to win, and they've got some nice guys on the outside for Carson Wentz to be throwing to, and the defense is pretty good. Mike, we haven't talked about it much today, but Booger, as you watch the Eagles play right now, what do you think we're seeing?
Well, I think you're seeing a defense that's more comfortable, a defense that's playing better. Fletcher Cox is starting to assert himself as one of the more dominant players. Not that he hasn't been, but he's becoming even more dominant now. And on offense, they were waiting on Nelson Aguilar to step up. Receiver out of USC, Tampa kid, had the drop C's early in his career. Now he's starting to catch the football better. But it just goes to show you, when you're an organization and you hit the quarterback position right, what your organization can be. Okay, Carson Wentz, we had so many doubts about him, but they were right. And Carson Wentz makes so many plays. Nelson Aguilar comes in. I understand Sproles, you lose him. But what they can do from an offensive standpoint around Carson Wentz and his skill set, especially when you get guys catching the ball, Jeffrey, Aguilar, I like where they are right now. I think they're in a very, very good spot. And when you look at the NFC East right now, the Giants are 0-4, and McAdoo has zero answer for what they're doing down there. You look at Dallas. They lose a game yesterday where a lot of people probably not outside of Los Angeles thought they were going to lose. And the Redskins, we don't just yet know what they're going to be, although they're coming off an impressive win against the Oakland Raiders. Why not the Eagles in the NFC East, especially how they're playing right now?
I've been impressed with them running the ball because, Wisniewski has filled in for some injury at guard, Kelsey at center. They're not the biggest guys around in the world, but God knows their toughness. I mean, these are guys that will stick their face mask into a chest and bite, scratch, kick, do whatever they have to get the job done. They ran the ball 42 times. They almost doubled up the Chargers in time of possession. So that you don't always expect. Blunt had 16 carries, 136 yards in this one. They have 214 yards overall. So Aguilar, I'm right with you on him stepping up. Zach Ertz is always going to be a huge target for Carson Wentz. Those guys have a great special relationship going on. But, boy, if they can run the ball, and they're not going to run for over 200 yards all the time, but if they can control a little more running the ball, that is really going to help Wentz out a lot. And yesterday, that was the name of the game for him, as they had just about 40 minutes of time of possession.
Right,
yesterday.
Running the ball and more experienced quarterback play and time of possession, meaning 2 years ago, you're going back to the Chip Kelly stuff, would lead you to a statistic like this. The Eagles are 2-0 in games this year that were decided by 3 points or fewer. The last 2 years, they're 1-5 in those games. You start winning those close games, that pendulum switched back on the Cowboys a little, who found ways to. The game that the Cowboys lost yesterday is a game they won every week last year.
Yeah, right.
And those things just kind of even themselves out, and all of a sudden Philly is looking very much like they may be the team to beat in that division. Another team that I really like the way they play is Detroit. As I watch the Lions play every single week this year, and they could have, maybe should have beaten Atlanta. A call at the very end of the game is probably the right call, but they lose by 6 inches in a 10-second runoff at home. Otherwise, they're sitting at unbeaten right now. Do the Lions, in your view right now, Booger, as they run the ball a little better, do they play enough defense to win that division?
They do, but they have to get explosive plays on their defense from their front four. Ziggy Ansah has to be a terror on the quarterback. They're not good enough individually to stop a team from going 70, 80 yards down the field. They have to get turnovers. They have to get explosive plays. They're not quite like the New Orleans Saints when the Saints won the Super Bowl, where the Saints had to get almost 40 turnovers and opportunistic defensive plays to stop people to go along with that explosive offense. But they're in the same vein as they don't have the personnel where they can just roll their head out there and say, you know what, we're going to win this game 17-13. Okay, they need to get stops periodically to give Matthew Stafford the football. And for Stafford, I want to see him become more consistent. We all give him credit toward the end of the football game. If you give Stafford the ball with less than 2 minutes, man, he's unstoppable. Well, what about the first 58? We need him to become more consistent, and I think he has, and the running game will help him. It's amazing how in football we laud these quarterbacks, Ryan, Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, all these guys, and say, man, these guys can win the game by themselves. No, they can't, okay? They can put themselves in a position where if you give them enough opportunities, they'll win you the game. But they're not going to win it by themselves. They need a good running game. Nobody needs to be throwing the football 60 times a game. They need a solid running game and a good defensive performance, and Matthew Stafford is no different.
I agree with you on the defense as far as big plays. They got 3 fumble recoveries yesterday, no interceptions. But here's the best thing to me. They held the ball for over 13 minutes more than Minnesota. Stafford threw the ball 31 times. They ran the ball 31 times. And not for a lot of yards. They ran it 31 times for 97 yards. My quick math says that's just a hair over 3.3 yards a carry, right? Right in that area there.
That's close.
Little more than that. That's not great. You're not going to make a living on that, but when you can throw the ball well like Stafford can, now you can. This is when we talk about attempts of rushing, where you're not breaking it off and you're not averaging 5-6 yards per attempt. You're averaging 3 or a little over 3 yards, but that's okay. You're still running the ball. Abdullah ran it 20 times yesterday, and he's a guy that can catch it out of the backfield as well as Theo Riddick. So That's what I like about them. They are giving the run a chance. They're not just saying, well, we don't run the ball, or when we run the ball, we're getting stopped for 2 yards or 3 yards, so we're just going to throw the ball. They stick with it and stick with the game plan.
Booger is here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. I'm just scrolling through some of the things being tweeted. I'm reading our friend and colleague Louis Riddick tweeted the following. Baffling watching tape of the Patriots secondary not be able to communicate through and cover bunch stack formations. Not good, but correctable. To me, that's the really big phrase at the end there. Not good, but correctable. The things that we are seeing go wrong for that New England defense, and again, only Indy has allowed more points through 4 games this year than the 2-2 Patriots have. We know they're not good.
Yeah.
But, guys, are they correctable?
Yes,
sure.
Yes. I mean, it's really no different than me and you sitting here talking. And what they mean by a bunch formation, usually when you have 3 guys together, they call it a bunch. Well, it's tough to play man-to-man when you have 3 guys that tight. So usually what they have is one guy will take the guy that comes in, one guy will take the guy that comes out, and if a guy goes deep, another guy will take him. Well, that's communication. You have to be talking, and it's tougher at home to talk. Let's not forget that. When you're on defense, your crowd is going crazy. So it's often tougher to play defense at home than it is to play offense because the crowd is going crazy and you have to communicate. I just think from a corner safety standpoint, when you have Gilmore, who's new, okay, Butler's been there, McCourty, those guys should have that down by now. Gilmore's not a rookie. He's a guy that's been around the league, and it's really baffling to me that you have veteran football players who aren't communicating. I think Bill is going to take that personally. I think Matt Patricia is going to take that personally. Something is amiss when you have veterans not doing it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then you have at times like Funchess is wide open in the end zone where you just have a complete breakdown of coverage. So, yeah, all that stuff is correctable. When you're a player, there's the first thing you need to do is line up in the right spot. You know, in my dad coaching me and then me coaching my sons, first and foremost, know where the hell you're supposed to be, okay? And then once you're there, know what you're supposed to do. That's the beginning of it all. If I'm going up against an O-lineman and he just I do what I'm supposed to do and he just physically beats me, well, that's something I got to work on. But if I shoot the wrong gap, now I've created havoc. Now I've opened this huge hole. That's correctable. That's just, hey, Golic, you're in the wrong gap. Get in the right gap. And then we'll talk about now beating the guy one-on-one and using your technique, right hand, right foot, you know, the whole deal that way. But first and foremost, line up where you're supposed to, know what your responsibility is, and when you don't, you see the results.
This is a pattern with New England, though.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen this all year long. I've heard you mention it this morning, and that's the alarming thing. We keep saying, yeah, Bill will get it fixed. Well, how come he hadn't got it fixed the first 4 weeks? And so I understand we want to give Bill Belichick all the credit, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
But what's going on the last 4 weeks that he hadn't gotten it fixed so far? This is like 4 weeks into the season, and we're still seeing the same thing. So maybe these guys are just tuning Bill out or aren't listening in practice.
Which would be stunning.
Well, which would be stunning, but we're seeing it for 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
4 consecutive weeks he's allowed 300-yard passing days to Alex Smith and Deshaun Watson and Cam, and who was week 2 now? I'm blanking. Oh, Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, right.
Who's obviously done that to a lot of different people over the years. But I mean, it is what it is. You give up 4 consecutive 300-yard passing days. That doesn't happen particularly often to Belichick or to anyone for that matter. And they're not, I mean, I don't know if it's communication, but they're not getting any pressure on the quarterback.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, the longer there can be lack of communication, and then you're asking a guy to cover for too long. You're not getting the pressure. And as Jeff Saturday said when he's in here, and he's right, this is a defense that's normally very good at setting the edge. And they've been giving up a lot of outside runs, starting in week 1 to Kareem Hunt and going on and on for guys bouncing and being able to turn the corner. That's something this defense would not do by setting the corner, and they haven't been doing that.
Speaking of defense, obviously there are some really good defenses around the sport right now. We've talked about Denver's defense. How about Buffalo's defense and the way they're playing right now? The Bills are 3-1. They're sort of a dropped pass on a 4th down away from maybe being unbeaten right now. They're in first place in the division this late in the season for the first time since 2008, for whatever that's worth. But how good is that defense? How good are the Bills? Are we buying into the Bills a quarter of the way into the season?
The Bills have gone back to who they were before Rex Ryan. If you remember what that defense was before Rex Ryan, I mean, they got almost 50-some sacks. They were rushing the passer, creating havoc. Rex comes in. plan, changes the defense. Mario Williams looks lost. Like, man, what's going on? Now you take out Rex. Now they're back to attacking the quarterback. They're back to getting and playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. Kyle Williams, a veteran football player who's been around the league a long time. He's the leader of this defense, the leader of this team, and they're playing to the beat of his drum. And for me, that defense has to be aggressive. I like Tyrod Taylor. I think his ability to run just enough keeps the defense honest, and he's throwing the football very well right now. A lot of people say that, man, maybe they need to change the quarterback. I like what they have, and Greeny, never, ever underestimate the attitude of a new coach. When you look at Sean McDermott, the attitude and the personality he brings to that team. When you get a new coach, or you get a coach in general, most teams play by the personality of their head coach. And Sean McDermott has changed everything. Rex Ryan changed it from a negative standpoint because they didn't play well. But what Sean McDermott is doing right there, he has those guys galvanized, and he believes in Tyrod Taylor, and you can tell.
And these players, I mean, listen to LaShawn McCoy in the locker room afterward. They're playing with that huge chip on their shoulder. Like everybody, we're still handing the division to New England, right? If we all had to bet any money worth anything right now, would we still say the Patriots are going to win that division? Well, the Bills hear all that. Again, their Twitter account tweeted out all of our picks. We all picked the Atlanta Falcons, which isn't shocking. Atlanta's at home,
right?
You know, and I know Julio got hurt, and I know Sanu got hurt. I get all that, but they're all playing with a chip on their shoulder, and good for them. They should be cussing all of us out and using us all they can, anybody all they can that is talking down about them to get it done. Defensively, they have 11 sacks by 6 different people, so it's not just one guy getting the pressure. I absolutely like what they're doing, and when you can lead the league in defensive scoring, you're giving your offense a chance.
Mike and Mike, we're brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Upgrade to shaving with a fresh blade whenever you want for a fraction of the price. Join DollarShaveClub.com today. It's now however many months ago it was that we were all three of us together in Philadelphia for the NFL draft. Booger, you and I were actually sitting and watching the draft together that night. I remember eating something after playing golf that day, watching those quarterbacks go. And watching the Bears stun the world by trading up to get Trubisky, and watching Andy Reid stun the world by taking Patrick Mahomes when he did. And then it almost felt, I don't want to say it this way, it almost felt like Bill O'Brien said, all right, you left him there, so I'll take Deshaun Watson. And now all of a sudden this kid is just sensational. What he did yesterday was spectacular. No rookie quarterback had done what he did since Fran Tarkenton. The last guy before that was Charlie Connerly. So we're going back a combined 100 years since the last time we saw all of this stuff from what he's doing. Their defense is playing well. What you make your, mostly you're living here covering college.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by how good Deshaun Watson looks this quickly?
No. Because, Greeny, I don't go by measurables when I look at collegiate players. I go by performance and their decision-making in the moments. I watched this kid 2 years in a row against the best defense known to man, led by Nick Saban, shred him. I mean, he gutted Alabama's defense, and that's all I need to see. So in the biggest games against an NFL-type defense, and that's what Saban runs because he's a Belichick disciple, Deshaun Watson showed you and proved to you he could play. So the fact that he went 12 to the Texans, to me, was a little surprising that he went that low. But his performance now in the National Football League is not surprising. He relishes being in the big moments. I picked Clemson against Alabama in the national championship game because all else being equal, the guy that had the S on his chest was wearing orange, and that's Deshaun Watson. What's baffling to me is the fact that it almost seemed like Bill O'Brien said, you know what, Tom Savage, I'm going to do you a solid. I'm going to let you start the first game of the season. I'm going to do you a solid because I owe you a favor. But after that, buddy, it's going to be a long season for you because you're not playing anymore. Because I still have no idea, like you, Greeny, why Deshaun Watson didn't start the season as a starting quarterback. But he's phenomenal. He's going to go through some growing pains. But what he has, Greeny, is great decision-making, great poise. And from a character standpoint, you won't meet a better guy because of how he grew up, and he appreciates where he is. And to me, I think he's the next great quarterback. Once you get past Winston, Mariota, and those guys, he's right there.
Yeah, just because you handle the big lights well in college doesn't always mean it's going to happen in the NFL. We've seen guys play big-time college ball and not translate. But as I said all along, Booger, I said it before the draft, he would have been my first quarterback taken. He has that it factor. Yep. And you look at him, and what do you look at when a quarterback develops? One of the things I look at, you look at his first game when he got thrown in there in the second half. Each game he's thrown the ball more times.
Yep.
And each game his completion percentage has gone up. In that first game when he got thrown in the second half, he completed 52% of his passes on 23 passes. Next game he started 24 passes, 62%. Next game, 33 passes, 67%. And this past game, 34 passes, 73%. So, and still anywhere from the average passing 5 yards to 9 yards to 8 yards. So it's not just dinking and dunking all the time. And he's improving there, which I think that's what you have to say about him, is he was going to come in and be the most ready to play right out of the gate. Now, we'll see where the ceiling goes, because that's exactly why Ryan Pace took Trubisky, is he thinks Trubisky's going to have the higher ceiling. As I said always, Booger, you draft somebody for 10 years, not 1 year. Right. You don't draft them for their rookie year. So we'll still see what happens with the other quarterbacks. But there's no denying that this guy, I compared it to Russell Wilson coming in now as a third rounder, so maybe not much was expected of Russell at first, but he wins the starting job. But just how quickly he's kind of taken over to where he seems already to have the trust of everybody else on that offense.
And it's the poise. And I'll give the fans just something to take a look at. Let's use Mike Glennon, a guy that's been in the league for a while. When Mike Glennon drops back in the pocket, he just looks frantic. Looks like everything is rushed. Watch Deshaun Watson. He doesn't look that way. That's the it factor. The it factor that I can be calm amidst everything that's going on. A guy like Glennon, who's been in the league a while, to me still doesn't have that. But when you look at Deshaun Watson, he has it already his rookie year.
And I don't know if he's listening to our conversation or not, but Louis Riddick, while we're having this discussion, 1 minute ago tweeted, "Nothing happens in a vacuum. For as good as Deshaun Watson was yesterday, Titans defense had no clue how to defend the multiple Texans attack." What does he mean by that?
Just that Bill O'Brien can come up with zone read, different formations, different personnel groupings.
Bill O'Brien has his playbook is
endless,
monstrous,
right,
of all the different things that you can do. And that's a credit then to Deshaun Watson to be able to digest that much of it, because that's another reason maybe Savage started this season is, you know what, there's a lot to spoon feed here and to take in. So the more Deshaun Watson has gotten of that as each week goes by, again, a credit to him to digest that.
And look at what Andy Reid is doing also. Andy Reid is basically running a college offense right now. So Bill O'Brien, being very astute and smart, is saying, you know what, let me add some of those principles in. If I'm going to have a mobile quarterback, let me use him in that way. Run some zone read, run some RPOs, run pass options. So if you're an NFL defensive coordinator and you've never been to the college game, you don't understand how to deal with that. So you're going to see more and more guys start to run some of the college plays. And Andy Reid right now has a playbook full of them with Tyreek Hill and Alex Smith. And they are gutting people right now.
Tennessee had been doing it with Mariota got in the league to be able to use his strengths from college at this level.
All right, Booger McFarland's in our studio here, and obviously one would assume that college football would resemble the NFL more than it would any other sport, considering they're theoretically playing the same game. But right now, through a month of the season, college football looks a lot more like basketball, a lot more like the NBA, because it certainly feels like we are on a collision course for Clemson, Alabama, the trilogy, which we've seen with the Warriors and Cavs the last few years, Booger. So if someone says college football right now is Alabama, Clemson, and everybody else, is that overstating it?
No, that's exactly right. There's a gap between those two and everyone else. And I think they're playing the best. They have the best players. They got the two best coaches who are executing their plans the best right now. Now, does that mean that they're going to play for a championship? No. But it feels just like the NBA. Like, regardless of how they play or what happens, prime example, Greeny, Clemson is against Boston College 2 weeks ago. And everybody's saying, man, Clemson is sleepwalking. Kelly Bryant's not playing well. And they wind up winning by 20 points, I think, in that game. It just feels like we're headed there, the inevitability of that matchup. And let me say this. I have no problem with that matchup. Now, with that being said, there are some challengers in the category right below that if they get an opportunity and the ball bounces their way, they can play. Number one will be Penn State. Penn State has the best player in America, Saquon Barkley. They got a lot of intangibles. I like what they're doing offensively, number one. Number two, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma, they have a dynamic offensive game plan, some good receivers. I love Lincoln Riley's aggressiveness. Washington, I think they're going to win the Pac-12. I think they're going to be undefeated. But I just fear we're going to see the same thing we saw last year if they get into the college football playoff against an Alabama team. You look at other teams. Ohio State may make a run. Georgia's the team that really intrigues me right now.
There you go.
Because I think Georgia has the one thing that if you look at Alabama and you look at Georgia, you say, very similar. Dominant defense, dominant running game, quarterback, manages the game very well. And oh, by the way, who's the head coach? Kirby Smart. Where'd he come from? He came from Alabama, and he's molded that team. They are tough, physical.
Love them.
Dude, they are tough and physical, and they're playing really, really well right now. But all those teams, and I'm not leaving out TCU and Oklahoma State and all these other. I get that, but it's Bama and then a group of 5 or 6 other teams that are Bama and Clemson, and then 5 or 6 other teams that are right there. And I think they need help to get into the situation.
Think about it with Bama. You know, when you're playing a team like that, you say, okay, if we both play our perfect game, Bama's probably going to win. So we need them to maybe make some mistakes or maybe not play their best. They have gone 8 straight games without a turnover. 8 straight games without giving you an extra opportunity. I mean, it's just crazy. I agree with you about Georgia. I got to see them up close and personal when they came to South Bend, beat Notre Dame 20-19. Now it looks like it's Notre Dame's only loss, and Notre Dame has been running all over people since. It looks like a good loss now to them. But sticking to Georgia, they're not going back to East, and Fromm's going to be the guy as the freshman. At least I don't think so.
No, they're not.
So here's the question to me. What happens if these two teams, in Georgia and Bama, wouldn't meet till the SEC championship game if they're both undefeated? Then the biggest question to me is, does the loser get in?
Well, to me, that
depending on the game, if it's a good, close game.
Correct.
And obviously, are there other undefeateds and things like that as well? But that's what we've never had. What was it, Hembo? We've never had 2 undefeateds in the Final Four.
No.
So if that holds true, the winner of that game would be the only undefeated in. Maybe you'll get one more undefeated, but say you have 2 undefeateds and 2 one-loss. The other one-losses are going to be teams that are conference champs, most likely, and even though we saw that it's possibility it doesn't happen like it did last year. But could one of them be the loser if those 2 teams are undefeated going to the SEC championship?
I think what you look at right now, when you start to look at the Power 5 conferences, the Pac-12 is really in a tough situation right now. USC was their darling, Sam Darnold.
Sure was.
They've been playing with fire all year, and then Friday night, Pac-12 after dark, they finally got burned.
Mike Leach, man.
Hey.
That dude unreal.
It's like Woodstock, except everybody had their clothes on.
What a great line that was.
Best line ever.
How good are they? I mean, because I was
State?
jotting names down when you were going through names that could compete, and I mean, they're unbeaten.
Yes.
And they have a huge statement win now there, and if you look at the rest of their schedule, they'll wind up, they have a very good chance of playing that big game at the end against Washington with both those teams unbeaten. Now, obviously, it's not necessarily going to happen, but they have a chance of that. They call that the Apple Cup, right?
The Apple Cup, yeah.
And, so the winner of that game could be unbeaten at the very end of the year.
I think Washington has a better chance than Washington State. Washington doesn't play USC.
Washington State just beat USC.
No, Washington State just beat USC.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Washington State has that win,
Right. But I don't.
Glamour win.
I think Washington is a better team than Washington State. That's what I'm getting at. So even if you get to that game, I think Washington is the best team in the Pac-12. But because of what happened last year, and I know the committee is not supposed to pay attention to that, but because of Washington getting drubbed last year in the college football playoff, if they win the Pac-12, I don't think they're going to get the benefit of the doubt this year.
You left out 2 unbeaten Big Ten teams also in Wisconsin and Michigan. Are we buying either of them?
I'm buying a little bit of Michigan. I'm not buying Wisconsin. Wisconsin their schedule is setting up very, very well for them right now, but I think their schedule is going to get tougher as they go on. Michigan, their defense is outstanding. It was the best defense in the country last year. I think statistically it's the best defense this year. But, man, the offense has been just terrible. And I think eventually Penn State's going to catch up with them. I think Penn State's the best team in the Big Ten. I do.
Penn State, I do as well. And I tell you, there's 2 guys that we need to start looking at, and I'll say it because it's the left coast that we don't. The quarterback for Washington State, Luke Falk, he's trying to say, hey, look at me. I'm 6'4", I'm 225, I've got 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I'm a prototypical looking type of an NFL quarterback. How about the way I'm throwing the ball and what he did in his opportunity in the spotlight? And how about the kid, we kind of put them by the wayside because they've lost early with Stanford, and they just had Christian McCaffrey and what he did. How about Bryce Love?
Yeah.
What this running back is doing. He has over 1,000 yards already in 5 games. He's averaging 11 yards a carry. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Phenomenal. But, again, their games for East Coast and Midwest, their games start later, so you don't see him as much. That kid is running great, and Falk is throwing great for Washington State. You just want to give some of those guys some love.
So and well-deservedly so, and so those are some of the great performances. But why don't I pause on that thought, because coming up next with Booger McFarland, we had 2 losses of the head-scratching variety, to say the very least, over the weekend. One of them involved your alma mater.
I knew we were going there.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, listen, I mean, you lose at home to Troy, and all of a sudden the name Ed Orgeron starts trending everywhere. And then you see what's happening with Tennessee right now, and you wonder what's happening there. So could we have a couple of what are you laughing?
I'm just trying to, picture Troy before they leave town. Hey, and our check as well?
Oh, did you see the tweet? Did you see the tweet they sent out?
Yeah.
You talk about the ultimate troll job? I'm like, we had to pay them what?
The best of Mike and Mike.
The O.J. Simpson circumstance, again, it's only really peripherally a sports story, but he is one of the legendary figures in football history, and by now I'm sure you're aware that he was released from prison early Sunday morning and has been traveling through the state of Nevada. Our understanding is that he wants to go to Florida. Perhaps they don't want him there. Let's try and get some insight into this, if we can, from former O.J. Simpson attorney Carl Douglas, who's been with us a couple of times over the last few months, and he rejoins us. Good morning, Carl.
Hey, Mike, how are you doing, man? Glad to have me on.
We're doing well. It's nice to chat again. And let's start with that, because you can provide some legal insight into things that we really don't know a whole lot about. We understand the circumstances that he remains on parole and everything else. Is it as simple as to say he cannot necessarily go wherever it is he would like to go from here? What are the rules when it comes to a circumstance like this if O.J. Simpson wants to make his home in Florida going forward?
Greeny, my understanding is that because he was such a model prisoner at the jail facility at Lovelock in Nevada, that Florida virtually has no rights to object to his being transferred there once all of the paperwork has been submitted. So the authorities in Nevada have to submit paperwork to Florida, and the Bureau of Prisons of Florida then virtually has to accept him there, even though the Florida AG has given words against his being transferred there.
So, Carl, let's go back again and just kind of relive for a moment. Back when you first knew you were going to be part of this whole thing, back in 94, of what was going on in the beginning with the double murder, and just it was OJ, and so you're involved in this. So just take us there for a moment from the beginning of that, just from your side of it, what you felt, what your emotions were during that time.
Well, Golic, you got to understand, man, I'm from Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, O.J. Simpson was an iconic figure ever since I was a child. He was a great college football player, going on to the Buffalo Bills to making great fame there. And then he transformed his sports career into really an unprecedented career as a pitchman, pitching Hertz Rent-A-Car and Chevrolets and soft drinks, and it was really a great insight for someone from the sports world to be able to transform into being a commercial pitchman as he was. He probably, man, was the most famous celebrity ever charged with murder. So it was a shock to all of us in Los Angeles when he was arrested for the crimes of those two deaths.
So then he's found not guilty of those and loses the civil case, but still he's free. I mean, he's walking the streets. How shocked were you when all of a sudden you hear of what happened in Las Vegas with kidnapping and robbery at gunpoint and end up going to jail?
Oh, man, it was tremendously disheartening and disappointing to me to hear that he had gotten himself involved in something as petty as this sort of burglary that befell him. And it really was, in my mind, an error in his judgment, having basically been found not guilty. I was hopeful that he would go away to Florida and basically ride into the sunset.
And, of course, that isn't what happened. So now he is out and he'll try and well, we don't know exactly what he'll do. What is your sense of what his future may hold? What contact have you had with him? What role have you played, if any, in his life in the last decades? And what is your expectation for where he goes from here?
Greeny, I have not had any contact with O.J. The last time I saw him, man, was in April of 2005. At the West Angeles Church of God in Christ in Los Angeles. That was the setting for Johnny Cochran Jr.'s funeral. And there was one of the speakers there that first asked everyone who had ever worked for Johnny Cochran, please stand up. And many in the audience stood up then. Then they asked anyone who had ever been represented by Johnnie Cochran, please stand up. And I looked to my right, and there was O.J. standing up, and a few seats away was Michael Jackson. It was indeed a sight that I will never forget. But since that time, O.J. basically went to Florida, and I expect eventually that he is going to petition and be accepted to return to Florida, where two of his kids live, where many of his friends are, and I suspect that he is then going to just take up residence there. I don't think, man, he's going to hide in some corner and cower out of the limelight. That doesn't seem to be the O.J. Simpson that I know. So he's probably then going to go out and just live his life the way he always has. He's not the kind of guy to kind of cower in a corner or to hide from anyone there. But there's going to be a new reality that I'm sure he's going to be facing with social media. He's going to be subjecting to some very stringent parole guidelines. He can't socialize with known felons. He can't drink in excess. And I fear that whenever he goes outside of his door, someone with a video camera is going to be streaming his every movement and every action. And that, I think, is the biggest thing that he must be mindful of.
Along those lines, like you say, you don't think he's going to hide away. You think he'll be out in public doing his thing. And then there's the next step, Carl. Do you think he'll try and monetize that? I know you say you haven't seen him in a long time, but just in your opinion, do you think that with those social media of today, there's also social media opportunities as well? And do you think if he tried to monetize it, he could in today's world?
Golic, I don't think so, man, because he hasn't given an interview in the last 9 years. There have been people who were guarding him who wrote books and given interviews. There have been other inmates who were at the Lovelock facility with him that given interviews. But you've heard nothing from O.J. Simpson other than the most highly publicized parole hearing in American history. So I think he's 70 years old now, having had his freedom and his liberty taken from him for the last 9 years is really a sobering circumstance. And so he understands that the Goldman and Brown families are going to be watching his every move. He understands that he can't make any money over the table without them being right there to take it from him. And I think he'll be able to live, Golic, as you know, on his NFL pension. He also has a Screen Actors Guild pension, so he's not going to be hurting for money, and I think he'll be able to maintain a comfortable existence than living off that pension, which no one can ever attach.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo! Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.